Hey friends, it's Blake with Birthing Babies. I am here launching a brand new podcast, Birthing Babies for Birth Workers. A lot of times it's exciting when we have a passion, but we're trying to get all of the pieces together to get that passion off the ground and let it become a business. And so I am here to help doula you through your birth business. I am here to coach you, to give you the support, to give you the real world advice, answer the questions you might have, the ones you didn't know you had, and the ones that you're still trying to figure out. Hey, my friends, this is Blake with Birthing Babies. I was totally prepared to go off on a random monologue about all of the things today. I even had a podcast name. It was going to be Rambling Mama. That episode may still come in the future because my summer brain is not firing as quickly as my fall and spring brain does. But instead, I ended up rambling about the Lamaze Exam. So I think I threw a lot of really good details to help you wrap your head around the exam. Unfortunately, this is the close of the Lamaze Exam cycle, so it won't be starting again until October. But I encourage you to check out the Lamaze Exam, check out a Lamaze educator training. If the exam feels intimidating, listen on and I will help break it down. Thanks, friends. So right now, we are at the close of the Lamaze Exam. And so that is something that with my program, I train Lamaze instructors. And so after my program, they often go on to do the Lamaze Exam and become Lamaze certified childbirth educators. I work with them. We have study groups. We have lots of fun things going. But the Lamaze Exam is hard, guys. It's a different kind of test than most people have experienced previously. And so you come in with certain assumptions of what the test is going to be like. In our code of ethics, we can't really talk about the types of exam questions that are asked, but we can loosely talk about what does it look like? What does it look like to take the Lamaze exam? If you have friends that are Lamaze instructors, they will agree it is a super difficult exam. The reason is there's so many topics that can be included under the umbrella of childbirth education. The Lamaze exam is designed to make sure that you are competent and know enough information about all of the different things. So it really does take a commitment to studying and understanding the topics that are important to parents. It's not something you can take a seminar or a Lamaze educator training on Wednesday and feel like you're prepared to go in and take the exam on a Friday. You need to really commit to understanding all aspects of childbirth education as best as you are able before you go in. So reading multiple childbirth education books, listening to podcasts, and really feeling comfortable with the material before you sit for the exam is important. Another thing that tends to trip people up is back in the 50s until the late 1900s. I don't even know how to say that. That makes it sound so long ago. So until the early 2000s, you had to be a nurse in order to be a Lamaze instructor. There were exceptions granted, but for the bulk of the educators, they were nurses. And so many of the people that come into the exam come from a clinical background just because of history. And the Lamaze exam is not like the NCLEX. So for many people who are already registered nurses in the United States, they're coming in and they're expecting this exam to be comparable to the NCLEX. One of the major ways that it's not is when you are a clinician, you need to be trained to anticipate underlying conditions. When you are a childbirth educator, you need to be trained to understand what is normal, natural, and healthy, and it's up to the clinicians to determine what falls outside of that, right? So we are not looking for other underlying health complications that we're not aware of. We're encouraging people to go back and talk to their providers. I'm going to put a pin in that, go back and talk to your providers, and then just continue on that. You don't have to worry about, but does this person have gestational diabetes? Or does this person have hypertension? So recommending exercise for somebody with hypertension may be not a great idea. But for somebody who is healthy and has a healthy pregnancy, exercise should be incorporated. So that's going to be one of the big things for healthcare providers and clinicians is just understanding that we are making the assumption that everybody is healthy there. I had you guys put a pin in the go back and talk to their care provider, because I think this comes into what is your scope of practice, right? So actually making medical recommendations to a student is outside of the childbirth educator's scope of practice. Medical decisions should be made with the medical care team. And so it's possible that there could be questions that seem very nitty-gritty in the clinical side of things, and we're not looking at what is clinically appropriate for you when we're answering the questions. We're talking instead about what is the norm, what are the trends that we're seeing, what can we expect with a healthy pregnancy, healthy mom, healthy baby, healthy person. So those are just some of the ramblings that I am hearing, the thoughts that I have circling the Lamaze exam. The next Lamaze exam cycle is going to be October 23rd through November 20th. The Lamaze exam is offered twice a year. It is usually in the spring and in the fall. This year, they used a new test vendor and had to push back the exam dates to the summer. They worked with students who were unable to make accommodations for summer, but those were the typical cycles are going to be spring and fall. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get back your exam results. So I anticipate that people will be hearing how they did early September, and then they'll have the chance to retake. So that's the other beauty is once you take a Lamaze educator seminar, you have 3 years to sit for and pass the exam. There are no limitations on how many times you take the exam, except for it has to be within that 3-year period. So if you take the training and then wait 2 years, then you may only have 2 exam cycles. But if you take the training and sit for the exam immediately, you'll actually have 6 exam cycles before you time out and need to do another training. Another limitation to taking the exam multiple times is going to be the price. So the first time you take the Lamaze exam, it's the most expensive because that incorporates 3 years of Lamaze membership within that pricing. That membership begins once you pass the Lamaze exam. If you have to retake the exam, there is a reduced rate because you don't have to worry about paying that additional membership fee. In 2020, with COVID at its peak, it was important for the Lamaze organization to pivot, and they worked with testing centers to provide an online platform for people to take their Lamaze exam. Prior to that, it was required that you go to an in-person center. Now you have the option to take the Lamaze exam from your home. This has been pretty awesome because it's increased the accessibility of taking the Lamaze exam. When I got certified back in 2012, I had to go about 2 hours from my house to find a testing center, take the exam, and then come back. So it was a major time commitment for me. I think that can be a barrier for a lot of people looking for certification. And so it's really exciting that you don't have to travel, especially if you're in a rural area that may not have a convenient testing center for you. Another fun thing to think about, or I guess another area of the Lamaze exam to discuss, would be what types of questions can you expect? As I mentioned before, because of the code of ethics, I can't really go over what content is on the exam. And truthfully, I took my exam 12 years ago, so I'm not really certain what was on there. I had no idea I would be training childbirth educators when I became one myself. What I do know comes from the education that I have received as a program director. So there's 2 types of questions that are commonly found on the Lamaze exam. One type, the first type, tends to be the easiest one for people to get correct. And so what that looks like is it's just straight recall. So this is the fact, this is the answer. The other type of exam question is going to be an application question. So for that type of question, it's a little bit trickier because not only do you have to recall the facts and what the research says about this type of birth or this process, but you also have to apply it to an everyday scenario. An example of what that could look like would be someone in your class shares a story of a friend whose labor stalled during birth, and they share that they have concerns about their labor stalling. What do you recommend? Now, looking at the answers, it could be using Pitocin if your labor stalls. It could be changing positions to see if that helps baby come down. It could be getting a cesarean. It could be none of the above. Based on the 6 healthy birth practices and the research that we know, the best of those options would be to first try moving around and changing positions, right? Because that goes back to healthy birth practice number 2. It doesn't mean that Pitocin or a cesarean may not be necessary at some point. It just means that would be the best first step. So they all might be viable options, but we're going to pick the best option and the one that most closely aligns with healthy birth practices and the fundamentals of Lamaze. I hope you found these tips and tricks and a little bit of insight on the Lamaze exam to be helpful and inspiring. The world needs more educators. This exam is just an exam. It does not define your worth. A lot of people need to take it more than once, and that's okay. Most people do not. Preparing is the best thing that you can do. Studying, reading, listening to podcasts like this one all help you feel more prepared. It helps to introduce different topics to you, and it's going to help you prepare for teaching in general. So if you would like more information on taking the Lamaze exam or becoming a Lamaze instructor or just a childbirth educator in general, my name is Blake Heitzlesser. I'm a Lamaze certified childbirth educator, a fellow in the American College of Childbirth Educators, among other things, and I offer a childbirth educator training. Details on that training can be found at teachlamaze.com. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope you guys have a great day.